This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Become a patron today at patreon.com/into-the-portal.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Amber Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay. And welcome back.
Film Friday.
Yes, indeed. I'm trying to go dark on this. It's Film Friday.
Sorry.
Because today we're taking a trip back to the 90s here, guys.
That's not dark.
We're looking at 1998 film Dark City. Who suggested this one to us? We gave him a shout out already on social media, but it's
Bradley.
Bradley
Morris.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Great suggestion. Totally fits in basically everything we are into on the show.
Exactly.
And I didn't learn this until after we watched it, but it's classified as a Neo-Noir Science Fiction, which is pretty much... I had never heard that before.
It's perfect.
Very, very cool. Directed by Alex Proyas. The screenplay was written by himself, Lem Dobbs, and David S. Goyer.
Group project.
The film stars, and this is quite the name, actually, and Amber and I were trying to figure out what this guy's name was.
He's almost calling him Mark Ruffalo, but not quite.
Rufusolo, no. His name's Rufus, how do you pronounce his last name? Sewell.
Sewell.
And it's weird, because it's like, everyone will recognize this guy, but it's like...
Tristan is old. Hello, people.
That's the... Right. Yeah.
People are going to hate me for saying that, because he's been in a lot of other movies that probably are way better in other people's opinion, but I love that movie.
You like that one because James Franco's in it, isn't he?
Oh, shush. I love period pieces and I love romances, so sue me, okay?
No, it's a good movie. You're not wrong. So, yeah, and it's starring himself, this Rufus, and obviously you got the B for Sutherland in there. Key for Sutherland. I hope someone gets that reference. Jennifer Connelly, who actually has a lovely voice, we learned in this one, and William Hurt.
Yeah, he's badass.
He actually is super badass.
Loved it.
So, yeah, Sewell plays John Murdoch. Kept thinking of Murdoch Mysteries the entire time. A man who essentially wakes up with amnesia, finds himself a suspect of multiple murders, and they're murders of prostitutes.
He has all these, like, headlines, like, clips from, like, newspapers in his pocket. It's, like, all set up. Wakes up completely naked.
Yeah.
In a bathtub.
And he's like... Yeah, he wakes up right at the scene, and then he basically sees a ritualistic killing, and he's not sure if it was him or what.
Pretty brutal.
So right from Jump Street, you're into a pretty intense situation in this movie, which I really liked, and it was all reminding me right off the bat of Sin City, very dark.
Yep, film noir,
exactly,
neo-noir.
Exactly,
it makes sense.
So, yeah, he's a suspect of murder, and the whole film is him trying, well, not the entire film, but the first part of the film is him trying to figure out who he is, right?
Piece it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, basically, like I said, we find him in this bathtub completely naked, alone. There's, like, one light swinging, which is actually telling, right? Because it's almost foreshadowing for what comes later on in the movie. Right. And then, essentially, he gets this phone call. He dresses himself. It's all very... austere, very creepy feeling. Obviously, he's just, like, super out of place. Like, you can tell already he doesn't even know who he is. And then he just starts exploring this city. And it's, like, so cool. You're right. It's, like, very stylistic. I love the cinematography of this film. And it's very Sin City-esque. Like,
definitely.
Like proto Sin City before it was made.
Definitely.
And it is a very dark place. And you made an interesting comment, right? Because right off the bat, when he starts exploring, well, he's in the hotel right away.
Yeah.
And the guy tells him to go get his wallet. It's almost like he has a trail of breadcrumbs of what he's supposed to do.
Yes.
And so he gets to the place where his wallet supposedly is. And it's this super, like, weirdly futuristic kind of thing going on. When he just came from, like, almost like a, not... It's like not Victorian, I would say like a modern style, like you know, like a mid-century modern.
It reminded me of like Great Gatsby, like 20s.
Or even earlier,
hotel.
actually, that makes sense. Yeah, it was a little more elaborate.
Yeah, but what you saw, you probably did see that though, because essentially what we get in this movie is, mid-century modern. Every era, it's like, it's very anachronistic, and I love using that word, because it's the most... I think that's so just bizarre and obscure, obviously. Like, if you were in a place, you see a 1940s car, and then, like you just said, he shows up in this super futuristic restaurant, where it's like
bizarre.
dispensing a burger out of this door flips up and he
must push the button.
It's very, very strange. And of course he has no memory. So everyone else is going about this and they're all just like, whatever. And he's slowly realizing they're almost like, they're not automatons like, but there's an element to it.
There definitely is. There's something weird going on. And it just gets weirder and weirder as the film progresses. I really loved this quote here. I just wanted to read this out before we get into our points of interest about the film. This is from the AV Club. It's just a review. But it says here, the dreamlike imagery renders the film's transitions between a hermetically sealed film... Oh, sorry. I totally biffed that.
Start over. It's all good.
The dreamlike imagery renders the film's transitions between a hermetically sealed noir world and a metropolis-like underground lair surprisingly fluid. With its shifting architectural styles, confusing subway lines, and constant echoes of the past, Dark City evokes a nightmare of city life. Murdoch always seems to be uncovering new crevices and hallways as he searches for answers.
Interesting.
Yeah, I really liked that one. I just thought they did a good job of describing just the mood of it all.
Definitely. And also I feel like embedded in that is kind of like, they might even be sort of saying that the film is making a commentary on directly like how, I don't even know, like maybe a city like New York or something like that, or just metropolises in general, and how overcrowded and weird they can be, and the effect on people.
The effect on populations and how humans, they do behave a lot differently.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's almost too obvious. Like, it's not like I'm discovering anything profound in that, but it's not what you are thinking of when you're watching the movie, because it is a sci-fi.
Yeah.
But it's not like a political, it's not overtly anything like that.
No, not overtly, I would say. But yeah, so basically John, he is an interesting bird, to say the least.
I love this actor.
He did a really good job. Like, his face, you get a lot of close-ups, especially on the eyes. His eyes convey a lot.
His entire career is based on his eyes, that guy.
You think?
Oh, yeah.
Which is actually interesting because they're irregular, right? Like, the one is very much smaller than the other.
Is it? It's more of not the eye itself, but just
the lid.
Just the way
the lid hangs.
Yeah, he's got this kind of
Make it
the lid hang. No, he does. He's got this very because he wakes up thinking he's a killer, and everyone keeps saying to him like, you don't look like a killer, like you don't seem like the killer type. And I know that's just the character in the movie, but it's very much his appearance.
Yeah. Do you want to get back to that first one? I have a lot to say about that very first scene.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I really loved all of the foreshadowing. Like I said, you get the light swinging, which there's no reason for that light to be swinging unless something hit it, right? Which means someone else was in the room or something.
Right.
And then you also get him waking up fully naked in water. Water is especially symbolic in this film. We get a lot of references to the beach, to the ocean, and seemingly never being able to get there or attain it. And then just the fact of him waking up in water, I just feel is very symbolic. And then when he finds the postcard for Shell Beach in amongst his belongings, quote unquote, because he doesn't know what this is. It's brand new shoes, right? He turns over the sole and it hasn't been worn.
Yeah.
So that's bizarre. And then you also get, which is very, like, I guess it is noticeable, but it's very telling, right, for what's actually going on in the film. You see the bead of blood on his forehead. Which is, of course, the way that they implant these new memories in people and new identities, which we haven't actually got into yet. But if you guys all have all watched the show, so
yeah, we hope
we're
so.
on the same page here. But anyways, I just loved that first scene, and the more I thought about it, the more I just feel like it was a brilliant first scene, really.
Yeah.
In the way
it
that
was, for sure.
And how disturbed he is, and how he comes across, like you said, like almost like a ritualistic killing.
Right.
And it's very it closely resembles the opening imagery of when you get like the credits and you just see a bunch of swirls.
Yeah.
And it's just like these bizarre, whatever, just amorphous swirls. And then you get that all over the body of the prostitute or whatever, the dead girl. So,
which is very much foreshadowing as well, obviously, to what they discover.
I had a question for you about that. Like, what do you think that is?
The swirling?
Exactly. Yeah. Like,
I feel like it's just the descent into madness. It's the spiral down the hole, the rabbit hole that is never being able to escape this place. And we kind of get that with the cop the friend of Officer, what was his name, Bumgard or something, Bumgardner or something like that.
Yeah. Did you mean Detective Walensky, the guy that went crazy?
Yeah,
paranoid
and he's
guy?
drawing the spirals all over his walls, right? Because he starts off almost trying to draw what seems to be like the streets outlining the city, and he's trying to trace his way to a way out. And we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but
well, you get that first imagery with the doctor, right?
Rat in a maze, exactly. Kiefer Sutherland's character, who was the only weak point in this movie, I'll say, and to be totally honest with you.
His character,
and honestly, and it wasn't even him. Like, I don't think he's the greatest actor of all time or anything, obviously. He's okay, he's good.
He's all right.
But he's a TV actor for the most part, which is nothing wrong with that.
But
he chose the dumbest voice for this movie. That was the only part about this movie that I have a bone to pick with. The delivery was
kind of weak.
It was just a little bit like he was trying to almost be like this weird... He was trying to have almost like a German or Swiss faint European-esque accent to it or something, where he's like, I'm only going to say things like a really annoying... Like
he's
captain
he's out of breath all the time.
Yeah, no, it wasn't cool.
It was weak, and it just reminded me of like the sniveling laboratory assistant.
Right.
Oh, master.
Yeah.
So it wasn't my favorite, and I actually had a point in the notes here, but I'll just bring it up now.
Before we get to any more stuff, though, I want to touch on how this all happens, because we haven't...
Oh, you're not gonna let me get my point across?
Okay. I'm sorry. I just feel like it might be confusing at this point.
You think? Okay, fine. Let's get into it.
Well, Murdoch, they get into it really quick in the movie, too. And everyone out there listening knows that I like that. Get into things quickly for Andrew, in my attention span. But you find out very quickly when...
Less dialogue, the better.
No, I like dialogue, but just it's got to be good dialogue. Get into it, you know what I'm saying? He finds out very quickly that he's being followed by these strangers.
Right.
And one of them falls in the first scene when he encounters them and cracks its head open, and this weird amorphous... clearly alien thing, some sort of thing, is trying to crawl out of the head, but then it dies. So it clearly needs a host. Yeah. It's parasitic in a way. It's almost like The Thing.
Ooh, yeah.
For those of you who've seen those movies, and you should by now. But that's the first instance we see. John's freaked out, and from then on in, he's realizing that these things have that this isn't really his home, right? This isn't his home city. No. This isn't Earth, maybe even.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Sorry.
So he's just on the run essentially because he realized, well, he gets the call from Kiefer. The call from Kiefer. No, from Kiefer's character, whatever his name was.
I just can only think of Bob's Burgers whenever I hear that.
What, Beefer?
And I gave away the reference, but it's just I can't help it.
But anyways, yeah, so he essentially gets the call from Kiefer and hits the road because he sees that he's basically being followed by these creepy-ass people that have these strange hats and are very, very pale. And all look the same. So it's interesting that they have human hosts, but those hosts actually almost transform into a weird uniformity that isn't actually present.
Yeah, like they're all supposed to be dead.
And even the kid, right? Because there's this one that's like a kid.
Yeah.
And exactly the same.
Yeah.
There was even one in the very end scene, like in the climax of the movie, where he's like actually like a baby.
So like it's almost like they do have, they almost do kind of form into their hosts and give them other features. And that's
part, I'm theorizing here, that's part of their collective unconscious, the fact that they don't have any concept of individuality.
Right.
Because that's a very important theme. That's what they want from these people, obviously. Because they're a dying race is the premise that we get in the movie. We don't understand why they're dying. It's some sort of thing that rests on the fact that they have no individuality, seemingly, even though that's not really clarified by them or by anyone else in the movie.
It's so ironic because,
right?
no, it's not. And it's so... they never even say that has anything to do with the reason why they're dying out. You know what I mean?
No, they never connect the dots, but seemingly that's why. Why else would they be pursuing this to such ends, right? Like, because it's the answer to their problem, seemingly, but I don't know. But yeah, so they're essentially on this mission. So they're after Murdoch. And he has that sort of scene on the billboard of Shell Beach, which again, we get these references to Shell Beach all the time. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
No one seems to know where it is.
But everyone's been there.
Everyone's been there. They have a memory of it. They just don't know how to get there. And when you go to the subway that's supposed to get you there, it just goes racing by and never stops. Yeah. So it's just this weird thing. But like you said, he dies. And like it's actually Murdoch's fault. Like he ends up, the sign, like the arm of the chick like ends up chopping off the back of his head, which is brilliant in my opinion.
Yeah,
it's like perfect. A classic karate chop. Like
right.
you can't beat that.
Yes,
in the movie.
That's right. That's how it went down. That's right.
And then you get this weird stuff. But then they start to unravel the plot a little bit more here with these telekinetic powers that these strangers have,
right.
and this shifting of the city, and how John miraculously seems to be exempt from this like automatic falling asleep that everyone goes under at 12.
Yes.
12 midnight. Is it like every 12 hours?
It's every 12 hours or whenever they want.
Exactly.
So they can put people to sleep whenever.
Totally. So they seem to have other powers too, obviously. Like it's all mind control based.
Because they don't have any arms or legs or anything. It's all telekinetic.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it's almost as if they have these bodies because they need them, but they're not actually even using them at all. They're just using their minds, which is so cool.
And here's the other thing, before I forget, because I didn't add this to the notes, I think the other reason for the bodies is that they can now use human language as individuals and communicate with each other for this master plan that they're concocting with with the humans as rats in a maze. If they were only existing outside of their hosts and wherever they can survive without hosts and only have this collective unconscious, then this collective consciousness, then you can't really... I think it would be hard to organize that way, you know what I mean? And that's why they make an point of emphasis of giving people names and like calling Mr. Hand, Mr. Shed, Mr. Quick, Mr.
Mr. Shed's the most confusing one, I think.
But it's just random objects, right? It could be anything. It could be Mr. I don't even know, anything. Mr. Microwave, Mr. Wall, Mr.
Mr. Quick, which ends up being the one that gets killed.
That's the one to me that doesn't make sense because that's not an object. Unless you're talking about Nestle's Quick.
That's true. Well, isn't there Mr. Sleep, too?
That's right. Mr. Sleep.
Mr. Sleep. There's a lot of things going on.
Indeed.
So they do have these weird powers, and they're using it to, basically, they're shifting the maze every 12 hours. Yeah. Or, like you said, whenever they want to. They can just freeze time. It's like their crazy little experiment. But, I took it as they're floating in space. It's outer space. There is this, like, sort of like a membrane-like barrier around the whole thing. And it's just got this, like, it's almost like a gear or something, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it looks like a wheel, because it's, like, turning, and then it's got this, like, inner mechanism that's almost, like, self-generating. It's like a generator. It looks like,
like almost like the inner workings of a really complicated watch or something, with all these, gears and things, but it's like it's almost like the mechanical version of the center of a planet, is how I thought of it. Like, it's a reconstruction. It's a fake. Everything's fake, but it's like the fake inner workings of a core.
It's fake, but there's something physical there. And I really liked that, how it wasn't like The Matrix, where it's all in your mind, you're sitting in a little pod, and it's all your imagination. There's something tangible there. And it's the combination of their psychic and telekinetic abilities and this... I don't even know. It almost looks like a plasma when it's coming out of the center of the machine, as it's called.
Right.
Like I'm just going to call it a generator because that's essentially what it is.
Yeah, it is.
And you see the swirl of buildings, like towers going, and they're spiraling up, and then they're just going to form somewhere on the surface.
Well, this just brings us to the conversation of what is matter and really at the root of it, right? And dark matter and all these things, because they're literally using telekinetic power in the movie to
create and generate and construct stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's pretty bizarre. That. Very cool.
Yeah.
This movie, I'm going to say right now, I don't care who doesn't like it. Hands down, better than The Matrix.
Yeah, it is.
Should have been. It wasn't set up for a trilogy like good old Neo was. I'm not saying The Matrix was bad. They were super fun.
They were fun.
This movie was better, in my opinion.
It's really cool. I just like the idea more.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Like,
I do too.
And the cinematography, the way they laid it out.
Right.
Like, I didn't really like the style of The Matrix. I'm just going to say that right now. It's like very
it was
1999 kind of feel.
Yeah, it was kind of like that, wasn't it?
This one was just way cooler, way darker. This noir element is just
definitely
got it going on,
very
I would say.
So. I have a question for you.
What's up?
Kiefer makes a comment about how they do... He's the one who tells them that they have this machine beneath the soil, is how he describes it, because even he doesn't really know where they are.
No, he had to wipe something.
We don't get to see where they are until the end, right? But he thinks they're on a planet, presumably in a little cage like mice or rats, and he thinks that there's a ground that they're on and there's machines underneath the ground. It's sort of like that, but not really. But he makes that comment. I'm like, oh no, now I'm losing my train of thought. Oh crap.
Oh no. You're gonna ask me a question.
I forgot the question.
Well,
I'll come back to it.
I have a question
Keep going.
for
I'll come back to it.
Okay, so Big question here. How the heck do you think John got these abilities?
Right. Well,
that's a big question.
In my mind, there's two.
He's like the chosen one.
In a way. Well, where do you think Matrix got the idea, guys? No, actually, though, that is basically this movie heavily influenced that series, for sure. It came out before.
I would imagine so. Mm-hmm.
I think it was either the Doctor concocted it himself as some sort of a way of fighting back, because he was like, I'm just a pawn in this game. Mm-hmm. Maybe I can find a way out because I'm the one who gets to keep my memories, at least of where I am right now. His whole family was erased. But he knows he's a doctor. He knows who he is, right?
Yeah.
So he could have maybe combined human. I mean, obviously there's this weird DNA memory thing going on, and they've concocted this stuff. Mm-hmm. Maybe he combined it with some of whatever they are and did it on purpose. The other version would be that it's totally by fluke, and it's just the fact that, like, he really is like a chosen one type situation, and he, even on Earth, would be the person who could maybe bend a spoon with your mind if you really tried to or whatever, right? Like and now he can tune because that's
hilarious. I didn't even mean to say that. He's in tune.
Yeah, he's tuning, and that's what they call it. And that's such a good way of describing it.
I love that. Yeah, the concept is really interesting.
Yeah.
That's a really good answer, because I honestly didn't have an answer to that question.
Oh, okay.
He woke up, and I just kind of assumed as like, well, yeah, exactly. It must have been a product of the experiment, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I think that makes the most sense. I mean, you got this doctor performing these. I mean, and I'll give Kiefer the one thing. He does kind of have that good, creepy doctor vibe.
Yeah. I don't know. His limp wasn't convincing to me at all.
Was he limping?
And neither, I'm going to bring it up now because he didn't let me bring it up earlier.
Sorry.
But his
limp wasn't convincing.
No, it wasn't. And that's the least of his worries, because his makeup artist did a terrible job too. That eye flap was ridiculous.
Ooh.
It looked terrible. It was bad. Yeah. And this is a movie that is really dark. Like, easily you could hide that in shadowing and whatever else, but even that didn't save it. So
they should have used Samuel L. Jackson as the doctor. That's my opinion. That would have been great.
Okay, so let's get on to some more of these things, because I have a lot more to say about this film. The Murdoch experiment itself, with the strangers, as they're called,
right? The
idea that they're trying to implant all of his memories, I guess you could say, into one of their own. And so I feel like maybe that's what it might have happened when he was a part of that experiment.
That makes sense, yeah.
And then he wakes up, and the question I have too, again, is like, he wakes up in the scene of the murder, presuming that he committed it. He doesn't actually have the memory of that, though, right? He doesn't have the memory of actually slaying her or anything, like, because
no,
I don't think he actually did it.
I think maybe at one point he has this quick flashback, but he's not sure if it's really
because my question is, like, because his memory's wiped and he's so confused, you get this moment at the very end of the film where you get Kiefer explaining what he did to him, right? And how he was in the process of injecting him when he woke up, is how Kiefer explains it. But I don't understand, because, like, he has no memory, so he's no memory of being a killer, and before, in the scene, you don't see him inject him with anything, even though he does have a little bit of a blood spot.
Right.
So my question is, like, does he just wake up a blank slate, and that's why he's so, like, if he had woken up with the memories of the killer, would he have acted in that way?
But he obviously he rejected them. And maybe that's like an evolutionary thing. Almost.
Does he reject the situation he found himself in, or does he reject the memories that are actually in his head?
Well, that's the question. I mean, Kiefer makes the comment, like, the doctor, keep calling him just Kiefer, makes the comment, you've had dozens of lives before this one.
Right.
So obviously it was working every other time up until then. It seems strange that it just wouldn't work just because he's poking a needle in his head. It almost seems like what's going in is now being rejected. Like, the body is saying, no thanks, I'm not taking that memory. And Markowitz, the cop, it was the same thing. So clearly this isn't just him as the chosen one. He didn't necessarily have powers, but he woke up during. He said that he did. He's like, they sometimes it happens. Sometimes people wake up.
Yeah, the street bum / former cop that he runs into at the subway when he sees the Shell Beach Express go through the subway, and he's like, why didn't it stop? And, like, the guy's like, that's the Express. And it's like, no, it's not. It was the Shell Beach. Yeah. And then the guy, he, like, goes and laughs, and he's like, oh, yeah, like, some people wake up. I woke up once. Yeah. And then for some reason he's just this, I don't even know why he's still there then, you know what I mean? Like, why isn't he doing anything about it?
Well, he does right then and there, right? He says, but he's like, I know a way out now. And then he jumps in front of the subway train.
Oh, right. Duh. Obviously. Yeah. I forgot about that part. Yeah. I watched the movie 3 times in 2 days.
That's his way out. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's a rough way out, but I mean, it's almost like in the movie 1408, spoiler alert, it came out a long time ago too, where, I mean, he's trapped in there and he tries to jump out the window, I think, in one scene, but then he just ends up right back in the thing. Yeah. So at least in this one, it's... Because that's the thing you're left with questioning too. Are they even real people that were stolen from Earth that are there? Are they clones? Are they from another planet that isn't Earth, that's just the same as Earth, and they have because they don't know where they're from. They're just, and the cop makes that comment. He's like, where were we taken from?
My answer to that would probably be that they just can't recall Earth because they have the memory of Earth is wiped from everyone.
Sure.
And that's as simple as that. It's almost like once you erase the memory, like almost like the hard drive, right? You can't recover it.
Picture that for a second. Picture all their families being on Earth mourning their disappearance, and you're a cop in some weird morphing floating city in space, and you have no idea. Right? Like, you think you're a cop, or you think you're a baker, or you think you're a dentist.
Or you think you're a really poor person, you've been poor your whole life, and then you wake up 20 minutes later and you're rich AF.
But you didn't remember it, yeah.
Exactly, and you're in this swanky dining room with your wife who's sitting 20 feet away from you because you're at a really long dinner table.
Right.
You have no memory of it.
The part about it that literally makes no sense, and John calls them out for this at the end, is like, how are you trying to discover individuality by mixing things around all the time? That's not... That doesn't make any sense at all. So clearly these creatures, these beings, have literally no sense of anything because they don't understand any social relationships at all. They just keep flip-flopping and switching it around. It's crazy. The human condition hasn't been seen until essentially John. I feel like, I mean, it's a very humanist thing to say, but I feel like it is true. It's like humans just want to fight back. Like, we just want to try to claw and scrape and survive and not be...
Yeah, I really liked what John said to the alien, the one that actually took his memories at the very end scene, right before he walks out to the dock onto the newly created ocean that he just made.
Right.
He's in this dark, teeny tiny little alley, and then he hears the voice of the alien that took his memories, and he confronts him, whatever, they have this little interaction, but he says in the end, he's like, you wanted to know what makes us human. You're not going to find it here. He like gestures to his forehead, and that's very telling, right? Because it's like
there's more than just
there's so much more. And actually, I'm gonna do a shout out to Ian over in the UK because he sent us. It's on our Facebook forum, but he sent us this amazing article about like the possibility of cells having memory, and all this stuff, and how the heart could actually store memory and all that kind of stuff, and store emotion potentially too. All these things. It's like it's a warehouse essentially. That's where we're getting into all sorts of other themes of like, yeah, exactly. Is memory a physical thing, or can it be like injected into people? That's so weird. But anyways, that's a side note. Liquid memories. But I just love that article that he sent us. It makes sense in this context, in my opinion, because it's not just the mind. Right. There are other centers and there are other areas of access to the soul, essentially.
And that's what they're trying to find ultimately. The human soul. And I think the doctor makes that comment too. I remembered what question I was going to ask you.
Oh, okay.
The machines beneath their soil, as the doctor describes it, we're basically left to believe that like they're powered by their telekinetic powers. But my question to you is like, what? Okay, I don't see how a race that could create that would be dying out because they don't have the ability to have an individualistic thought. That doesn't make sense.
To me, the premise of that is a little shaky, definitely.
So for me, it's like, maybe it isn't just the energy of their telekinetic power, but it's like, essentially, like, the only thing that I can think of on our planet would be like a uranium-powered, crazy space generator that they just function with their telekinetic powers, but it isn't actually, you know what I mean? Because, like, it's one thing to move something with your mind, it's one thing but to literally create matter out of nothing, to create... Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like there's almost more to it. Because what are the machines themselves made out of?
Yeah.
Even, right? Like, what are the buildings themselves made out of? Is it concrete, like you would have concrete on Earth?
Seemingly. The brick was real.
That's what it seems like, but they create it, and it grows out of their little ground. So is it brick? I don't know.
It just comes out of, it's almost like a collection of matter from the universe, right? Like,
sure.
Because there is a bit of like, it's almost like a funnel shape. Like there's like a tail leading away from it, from the center, from the bottom of the center.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like, there's just one scene where it really goes for a wide shot, a wide angle, and you can kind of see that. So I honestly, I have no idea. But that's definitely kind of a point that doesn't essentially make... The only way I could see that making sense, where it's like they're trying to find the key to unlocking the human soul as in individuality, as a way of saving their race, in the sense that potentially, and this is a weird metaphor, but almost like say they got a collective disease, a collective mental disease, mental illness. What if they all together experience this wave of it, and it's actually like a parasite in itself that starts killing them off, and there's no way to stop it unless you break the link in the chain. It's almost like removing the domino, so you don't have the rest of the chain go down.
Right.
That's the only way I could think that would make sense. That's why they're on this big mission. And then in the end, when they actually bring them in, they're like, it's time. No more moving around. No more of this. We're going to make you one of us, kind of thing. You remember that? Where they like wheel him in and he's all like strapped down.
And then busts out.
Exactly, right? So you get Kiefer giving him the wrong injection. He was supposed to make them one of them, and instead he gives him all of the answers, what he wanted to give them earlier in the movie, and he just doesn't accept it. Even though he's looking for answers. I hated that scene where he just like, anyways, he's like, I'll save this for later. Puts it in his coat. I was like, damn it, just use it now.
Yeah,
like,
no kidding.
Why? Trust him. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. Where was I going with that? I'm not even sure.
I don't know.
But I love that scene, right? Okay, so from there you get the cop. Sorry, not the cop. Like Bumstead was his name. The Inspector Bumstead.
Yeah.
And him, they kind of take Kiefer hostage. I'm sorry, I'm just referring to him as Kiefer this whole time.
It's way easier. You can say
really
the doctor, but it's fine.
But I like Kiefer.
Yeah.
It's a little nickname.
Yeah,
Not his actual name. It's not even a nickname. But anyway, so they take him on this, like, you know, like he's basically their hostage. And they proceed all the subway systems and sewers, and they're like in a boat at one time, and then they get to this wall, and it's like the wall, and they break it down. It's literally the void. It's just nothing but space.
Yeah.
That's like, that was kind of like a mind blown moment for me.
Yeah, because you didn't see, like, you discovered it later. I missed this part where it's not technically space right outside the hole.
There's like a membrane that the inspector goes through when he gets like knocked out with one of the aliens.
Because that, when I first saw that, I was like, wait a second, I thought they were floating in space this whole time. Like, that's not space.
They are,
like, that's some weird, just, I don't even know.
A void of
It
some
reminded me
sort.
of Ant-Man when he like shrinks down to like subatomic and he's like just chilling, floating around. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. So we got to basically the end here. There was this one note I made here about how, like, after he has that conversation with the guy and tells him, he's like, you're never gonna know what makes us human if you're looking to our minds, essentially, as the seat of the soul or whatever. But as he goes through the door, and you get, like, literally, like, the sun is just like this, whoa, the sun coming up for the first time ever, seemingly. And I just love that because it's just such a classic metaphor for, like, finding the light, you know? Like, it's so cliche to say, but I was like, damn, like, that's, like, full circle.
Totally.
And you get the whole connection with him and Jennifer Connelly, even though seemingly they only knew each other for that brief instance when they met in the very, like
they
beginning
weren't
of the movie.
together for a long time or anything.
No,
like that.
it's just all fake memories.
Yeah. There's so many metaphors with the darkness too, just to like go back to that. So it's like, it's called Dark City. We find out that like the strangers don't like the dark. That's why it's a dark city. Also, they like to keep people...
You mean they don't like the light?
Or sorry, they don't like the light, so they keep it dark. They have to keep it dark, so they're like these weird... I don't even know, right? They live in space where it's dark, so like whatever, right? They're also keeping people metaphorically in the dark, and John makes that comment to Bumstead. He's sitting there, he's like, I'm as much in the dark as you are, literally, because it's night all the time, and nobody knows what the hell's going on. And then obviously the Neo-Noir film.
Totally. Everyone's living in the dark.
Yeah.
Like, literally, like, their subconscious and their consciousness and everything.
That was one of my favorite scenes, too, when Bumstead is starting to question it, and he's asking him questions about the darkness, and he's basically like, let me ask you something. When's the last time you remembered daylight?
Yeah, he, like, totally calls him out. He's like...
And I'm not talking about a distant memory.
No.
Yesterday. Do you remember yesterday in the daytime? And he's like, can't remember. No. Could you imagine all of a sudden coming to that realization?
And he does kind of reject it at first. And then I loved it at the very end of that sort of interrogation scene where he's like, explain this. And he's just got like the dossier like floating above, like out in midair.
Yeah.
It's like, and then you get no answer from him. It just like switches scenes.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to, is it a cabaret scene after that with Jennifer Connelly singing?
Cabaret,
yeah. Which was I loved that too, right? Like I really noticed that, like what she was saying, the lyrics of her songs are very telling. They're very right on point as far as the themes. You get the one about the what was it? The first one is about like the lover sway with me in the ocean, like the waves and all this stuff.
Don't you know you have a way with me, stay with me, sway with me.
Sway with me, exactly. So allusions to the ocean, Shell Beach, all that stuff. And then the second one where it's the runaround lover and how the little white lies with 1,000 lives. I was like, oh, that's so good. Like
1,000 lives, yep.
Yeah. It's it was perfect. I love that.
More than a little
seamless.
white lie, I'd say. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
So,
I have another thing that I don't think I brought up yet that's really interesting. When everything... It's really interesting what I have to say, everybody. It's not what I meant to say like that. But I think it's an interesting point...
Let me have the mic here.
Give me the mic! I think it's an interesting point of emphasis. When they all go to sleep, when it hits midnight... Mm-hmm. Have I mentioned this yet with the bowl of soup?
Nope.
Okay. When buy a hat like that, you should get a free bowl of soap. All right, got that out of my system.
Dangerfield.
But when the poor family is then morphed into the rich family, when it hits midnight before they make the changes, the husband, I think both of them do, but the husband just pops his face right in a bowl of soup. And I'm thinking to myself instantly, like, that guy's going to drown. How, like, before they get there to give him the new memories, he's going to be dead. But he's not.
Nope.
And so... literally, this place that they're on, this floating city, they literally are stopping the linear sequence of time. They're capable of that. They right, which is another interesting thing. Why
like
they are in such dire straits, because they can control time. Right?
You could just maybe think that his nose wasn't submerged.
No, his face was in a full giant bowl of soup.
Maybe it's just for dramatic effect.
People have literally died that way. I bet you a person a year dies that way, falls asleep in a bowl of soup or passes out in a bowl of soup. No, really though, and nothing. That's important because that I don't want to give spoilers away for other movies, but that reminded me of Arrival. With the idea, like, I'm not going to give anything away, but just like the idea of like non-linear time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
is interesting.
Totally. I never even actually thought about that part. And
I'm not saying it's not non-linear, but it's like
I have an issue with that too because while they freeze the people, if that's what they're doing, they're really not doing that though because John is able to walk around. There's still stuff going on. There's still whatever, like, you know. I don't know. One other thing I want to talk about just before we wrap this up was the importance of water.
Yes.
We did touch on that already. Like I said, like John obviously is found in the bathtub in the very first scene. I feel like water, obviously, okay.
The goldfish. He puts the goldfish into the bathtub.
Ooh, you see the view, the shot of that is very
from through
cool.
the portal, right through the.
So a lot of that has to do with the subconscious, dreams, all that kind of stuff. Like those are the quintessential tropes of water, or whatever symbology, if you want to call it that. Also, the idea of like washing away the past, cleansing, all that kind of stuff, purity. Yeah. You can also go to the Jerry Seinfeld bit. About how we were obsessed with water. Everywhere we go, we're looking for water. We're going to the beach. But as soon as it starts raining, one drop. Oh no. Better cover our water bottles. That's how he ends it. We just watched that episode the other day, so it's like, I need to mention that. But it is very important. And you get the creation of the oceans in the end. And then them, like the two of them, Jennifer Connelly and whatever his name is, Mark Swell. Just enjoying. Yeah. It's almost as if that's the connecting factor, and that's the underpinning of everyone's memories, right? The collective memories of Shell Beach.
Yeah.
But no one knows how to get
there. Yeah, and he's asking everyone the whole movie, and he's in the cab, and he's like, "How'd you get to Shell Beach?" And the guy's like, "Oh, you take the metro, and nobody can remember." Yeah. It's so weird.
It's actually, the unattainable, right?
It's the unattainable.
Limitless expanse of the ocean.
Here's another weird thing that might tie into the non-linear time I want to throw in at the end. That relates to the water, because he gives everyone an ocean. But when you see it pans out at the end and you can see this giant floating city, and now it's in the middle and it's surrounded by water. My question is, is there the same number of inhabitants in the city? Or is there the same number of buildings in the city? Or did he remove some to make room for the water? Ooh. Or is their perspective the same?
Is it constantly recycling?
Right?
Did he literally manifest water?
Yeah. Is it bigger because there's water now? Is it the exact same and literally like, no, they exist in what isn't even like a physical world the way we know it on Earth. Okay. It's like, the city is now smaller, but they're still in it. And
there might be consequences for what he's done, right? Because he even accepts that, right? When he's talking to him at the very end conversation with the alien guy that took his memories, and he says, like, I'm willing to accept that. Because he says, like, are you sure about this? Like, I'm just making some changes, right? And then they kind of have this thing where it's like, I don't even... Yeah. Anyways,
so, would you recommend it?
Yes, I would say I would recommend that a lot. I can't even believe I haven't seen this movie before. I feel kind of like I've
seen the cover a million times, and we've never rented it, which is bizarre.
You've seen the cover?
I've seen the cover in Leo's video. Shout out to Leo's video. Yeah.
I've never noticed it at all.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'd recommend it too?
Absolutely would recommend this movie. Better than The Matrix.
One more question for all of y'all out there. Post-ending of this movie, is John destined to become an all-powerful megalomaniacal dictator? He's the only guy with powers here, so what's going to go on?
He seems pretty chill.
Is there going to be a Dark City Part 2? I don't know.
Well, it was 1998, but...
well, maybe there was a Part 2. Yeah. We just didn't hear about
it. My only bone to pick was obviously Kiefer.
I
wish they got, like, one of the Sin City type actors, or like a Samuel L. or somebody like
what's
that.
his name? Josh Hartnell or something?
Yeah, sure. Like
actually, not for the Doctor.
I don't know. Just someone a little bit more badass.
Gary Busey?
You know what I mean? Gary Busey. Hey, 98, he hadn't gone full crazy back then, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to another installment of Film Friday. We hope that you enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
Dark City, if you haven't watched the movie, I know some of you guys listen before you watch, make sure you check it out. It's awesome. And let us know what you think. Send us an email into the portal mailbox@gmail.com. Come join our forum. If you're not in the Facebook group and you do have Facebook, shame on you. Come join the Facebook group. It's pretty sweet. We're posting articles all the time. It's really fun.
It was fun.
So join us there at Into the Portal Podcast, and it's the same on all our other socials, basically. And we'll see you guys again, and well, you'll hear us again in a couple of days with a new episode. Until then.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.